Ukrainian drones are smashing Kursk region and paralyzing a defense plant in Tula. Putin has erupted with new threats, demands recognition of the occupied territories, and is once again resorting to nuclear blackmail. The main intelligence directorate reveals the Kremlin's strategic reserves. There are about 2,000 missiles in the arsenal. Estonia is already building defenses on its border with Russia. Imagine Dragons challenge Budapest despite the ban on the Ukrainian flag. They put on a blue and yellow show. And Keith Kellogg unexpectedly flew to Lukashenko to talk about the war. Greetings. My name is Anastasia Dimitrovska, and right now, here are the main stories. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine, and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. On the night of June 21, 2025, while Russia was terrorizing Ukraine with Shaheds and also hitting the city of Kremenchuk with missiles, it was also very loud in Russian-occupied Lviv. Ukrainian drones visited the Kursk region and locals reported hits. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that they allegedly shot down 6 drones, and at the same time there are still no official confirmations from our general staff about any targets being hit. But we have an important update to the previous story. In Tula, after several attacks, a giant of the Russian military-industrial complex, one of the key defense plants of the Russian Federation, has come to a halt.
According to Astra's sources in the region's emergency services, on June 18, 5 drones attacked JSC Instrument Design Bureau named after academician Shipunov in Tula, which is engaged in the development of high-precision guided weapons. As a result, the building of the electrical substation, 3 warehouses with products, and an administrative building were damaged. A fire broke out, covering an area of 400 square meters. The second attack took place on the night of June 20. 1 drone hit a hangar used for loading finished products. According to Astra, the roof and walls there were damaged.
At that time, the Russian Ministry of Defense also reported several drones in the Tula region. But as we can see, an entire factory was shut down. Russia, as always, traditionally downplays the scale of its defeats. And while Trump spends 4 months halting the war in Ukraine, within 24 hours, Putin starts playing his same old record about one people again.
They asked about the regions in Ukraine that we consider our own. Yes, I've said many times already that I consider the Russian and Ukrainian people to be one people. In fact, in that sense, all of Ukraine is ours.
Putin also stated that Russia is not seeking Ukraine's capitulation. At the same time, the Kremlin dictator declared that wherever a Russian soldier sets foot, that land is ours.
There is a certain logic to military actions, and the troops end up in different territories. Well, you know, we have this old, it's not a saying, not a parable, but an old rule. Wherever the Russian soldier sets foot, that is ours.
And I could say something here, but Mr. Sternenko responded to the bunker dweller statement so well that I couldn't say it any better myself.
Vladimir Putin said that wherever a Russian soldier sets foot, that is Russia. Russian soldiers won't go anywhere if they don't have legs.
Well, Mr. Sternenko, can you speak in terms of facts? And from the language of facts, let's return to the language achem, the word, to Putin's statements. So the tragedy in Ukraine is not the result of the Kremlin's actions. Russia does not have the goal of taking Sumy, but Putin does not rule it out.
The length of this security zone in the Sumy region, the depth is somewhere between 10 and 12 kilometers, somewhere around, 8, 10, 12 kilometers. Next is the city of Sumy, the regional center. Well, we don't have the objective of taking Sumy, but in principle, I don't rule it out.
Meanwhile, Zelensky stated that the Russians have downright insane plans for the Sumy region. However, the defense forces are holding back the enemy.
Right. There was a very detailed report on the front. Special attention was given to the Sumy region, to actions along the border. I am grateful to our units for their resilience. The Russians had various plans and intentions there, absolutely insane, as always. We are holding back and destroying these killers. We are defending our Sumy region.
And of course, how could there be no statements about nukes? They were made this time as well. It's already become a tradition.
Calling them neo-Nazis on the territory of today's Ukraine might be their last mistake, because in our nuclear doctrine, as well as common sense and the practice of our actions, it has always been clear that we always respond to all threats created against us in a mirror-like manner. we always respond, and always in a mirror-like way. Therefore, our response will be very tough and most likely catastrophic.
Putin also says that he is very worried about the fact that the world is heading towards World War III.
It worries me. I'm saying this without any irony, without jokes. Of course, there is a lot of conflict potential. It is growing. And it's right under our noses. It concerns us directly. The conflict that we are experiencing in Ukraine in that direction. And what is happening in the Middle East. And of course, we are very concerned about what is happening around Iran's nuclear facilities. It worries.
Attention, a statement that personally left me a little bit speechless.
I want to draw your attention to the fact that almost 2 million people of former Soviet Union and Russian Federation origin live in Israel. Today, it is almost a Russian-speaking country. And of course, in modern Russian history, we have always taken this factor into account.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Folks, did you also get a sense of déjà vu from the state, or was it just me? As of today, Russia has accumulated more than 1,950 missiles. This was reported to RBC journalists by the main intelligence directorate in response to an inquiry. Specifically, among Russia's stockpiles are 1,250 cruise missiles, 600 ballistic missiles, and 150 Kinjal missiles. In addition, Russia can produce up to 195 missiles per month, with the majority being Kach 101 and Iskander-M types. Russia also has thousands of Shahed 136 drones in its arsenal, which it uses, among other things, to terrorize the civilian population of Ukraine. Therefore, we once again urge you to take care of your safety. Be especially vigilant and go to shelters immediately when an air raid alert is announced. The Russians continue to put pressure on the Sumy region. The defense forces have shown how they repelled enemy assaults in the area of Andriivka. And here is the north of the Sumy region. A group of Russians is trying to storm a position, and our infantry is repelling the assault. Meanwhile, in Yablunivka, in the Kostiantinivka direction, Russian assault units try to capture it using dozens of armored vehicles. Our defenders responded to the enemy with precision. Announcer, the enemy is increasing the number of attacks in the Siversk area as well. The heaviest fighting took place in the Pokrovsk sector of the Front 53 battles, while more than 10 assaults were recorded in the Lyman and Novopavlivka directions, and in Toretsk 20 attacks by the Russian army. Meanwhile, senior communications officer of the 59th Brigade Steppe Predators, named after Yakiv Handziuk Taras Meshak, says that the enemy is not launching frontal assaults on Pokrovsk. The Russians are trying to bypass the city and capture it without urban combat.
Taras Meshak, as for how they are operating near Pokrovsk, they are not attacking it head-on. Right now, they are focused on bypassing Pokrovsk, cutting it off from supply routes, from logistics routes, from lines of communication, and thus by encircling it, taking it without urban combat, without assaults.
Announcer, Kharkiv region. There, says Pavlo Shamshin, spokesman for the Kharkiv OTU, the enemy is particularly actively storming the area near Vovchansk.
Pavlo Shamshin. On this front line, the enemy is traditionally especially active in the area of Vovchansk and the surrounding settlements. There, enemy assault actions are taking place almost every day. The Russians are attacking mainly with small infantry groups of 3 to 5 people under the cover of drones. Vovchansk itself, as a city suitable for living, has in fact long since ceased to exist. The city is completely destroyed. There is not a single building left intact, yet the Russians continue to carry out assault actions there as well. If we talk about the fighting in the city, it should be understood that the Ukrainian defense forces are holding a certain area on the northern bank of the Vovcha River, specifically on the territory of the aggregate plant. And now the occupiers are making every effort to push our units beyond the natural barrier of the Vovcha River, that is to the southern bank. Fortunately, they have not been able to achieve this.
Announcer, and once again, Kharkiv region. Spokesperson for the Kharkiv Public Security Bureau, Pavlo Shamshin, reports on the difficult situation in the Dvorikhnaya area.
Pavlo Shamshin, the situation remains tense in the area of the settlement of Vorchna as well. There, The Russians are trying to expand their bridgehead on the western bank of the Oska River. Their assault actions are also taking place almost daily, primarily in areas of the settlements of Dvorichna, Kamyanka, Fihulevka, Krasne Pershi, and Stroivka. But it should be understood that in order to create a threat to Kupiansk from the north, specifically along the right bank, the Russians need to set up pontoon crossings over the Oskil, that is, to establish their logistics. Just recently, there was another attempt to set up such pontoons, but as in previous times, it ended in failure. Our aerial reconnaissance detected the approach of this equipment, and accordingly, this specialized equipment was destroyed.
Announcer, the enemy continues offensive actions in the Luhansk direction. Luhansk operational tactical groups, the Dmytro Zaporozhets, says the most intense fighting is in the Toretsk direction.
Dmytro Zaporozhets, recently they have started to use more actively, including armored vehicles and even motorcycles. If we take last month, over the course of 19 days last month, the number of assault actions by the enemy this month has increased by 33%. The use of FPV drones has increased by 34%. As of today, we have already recorded almost 7,000 uses of FPV drones. If the enemy continues its offensive actions in this way, specifically using FPV drones, not only is this component increasing dramatically every month, but this month, if last month there were up to 10,000, then most likely this month there will be up to 12,000. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to carry out both rotation activities and, in general, logistics. The enemy is actively trying to destroy them. It's precisely in this direction that we are focusing most of our attention.
Announcer, and while in these directions the enemy is already assaulting the positions of the defense forces, in the south the Russians are beginning to prepare for an actual intensification of assaults. This was reported by the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin.
Vladislav Voloshin, the situation here is quite difficult. The enemy is currently regrouping its forces and resources and is also trying, so to speak, to carry out logistical support and is constantly conducting reconnaissance activities. Well, everything indicates that soon, in a few days, they will once again begin to intensify their assault actions.
Announcer, as we can see, the enemy is actively trying to break through into the Ukrainian rear. However, our defenders give the occupiers a warm welcome there, and the FPV drone operators of the 5th Assault Brigade have even shown how they counter the enemy's especially cunning tactics. So the Russians continue to use pipes to infiltrate the rear of Ukrainian forces. And this is what awaits them. So we'd like to take this opportunity to thank the defense forces of Ukraine for their protection. Announcer, Russia is preparing for a major conflict with NATO. The modernization of the Russian armed forces is progressing rapidly, and by 2026 they could have as many as 1.5 million soldiers. In fact, this is stated in an internal strategic document of the German armed forces. And this is reported by journalists from the publication Spiegel. The Bundeswehr document in particular notes that Russia is deliberately orienting its entire state and economic structure toward a major conflict with NATO. That is why they warn of the danger posed by Russia, both for Germany and for Europe as a whole. It would probably be very naive to think that Russia will stop at occupying Ukrainian territories. And what do you think is the Kremlin preparing for war with NATO? Announcer, if you want peace, prepare for war. Estonia is building defensive lines on its southeastern border with Russia. Estonian media report that the first stage of the project to build defensive lines will cost 4.5 million euros. Specifically, at this stage, trenches 3 meters deep and 4 meters wide will appear on the Estonian-Russian border. In the event of a Russian attack, these trenches are intended to stop tanks and other vehicles, making them targets for Estonian defenders. In addition, the construction of 28 concrete bunkers and 10 warehouses is planned. It is also known that similar defensive structures are to be built by Lithuania and Latvia as well. And what do you think is this the right policy for these countries in the face of a possible attack from Russia? Announcer. Meanwhile, due to the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, the EU will not lower the price cap on Russian oil. Narrator. The European Union will not introduce a new price cap on Russian oil exports, taking into account the risks of a sharp price surge amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. Narrator, previously there were plans to lower the maximum price for Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel. Narrator, the idea of lowering the price cap is unlikely to work due to the international situation in the Middle East and market instability. At the G7 summit this week, all countries agreed that it is not the right time to make this decision. Prices were close to the cap level, but now they are fluctuating sharply and the situation is too unstable. Narrator. And so, after Israel and Iran began striking each other, oil prices rose quite sharply. This is also mentioned by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She noted that currently, quote, the existing oil price cap is fulfilling its function, so at the moment there is no significant pressure to lower it. Let me remind you that back at the end of May, Ukraine called on the European Union to lower the maximum price for Russian oil to $30 per barrel. This call was made precisely on the day the 17th package of sanctions was imposed against the Russian Federation. At that time, Ursula von der Leyen stated that the next package of sanctions could include exactly this reduction in the price cap on Russian oil. However, the situation in the Middle East has significantly shifted the focus away from this issue. So it is very likely that in the near future, the EU really will not lower the price cap on Russian oil. Announcer. Despite the ban on displaying the Ukrainian flag at their concert in Hungary, the American rock band Imagine Dragons put on a show in blue and yellow colors. Announcer. The band's lead singer, Dan Reynolds, consistently supports Ukraine. Since 2022, Imagine Dragons have been ambassadors for the United 24 platform.
Dan Reynolds, we need to protest. We cannot stay silent. We will not be silent, and we will not stop. We will not stop until Ukraine can live in peace.
Announcer. So at every concert, during the performance of the song Believer, Reynolds always appears with the Ukrainian flag. But in Budapest, displaying the Ukrainian flag was prohibited, so instead of the flag, there was confetti in the yellow and blue colors of the Ukrainian flag. Announcer. And finally, an unexpected meeting in Minsk. A special envoy of Donald Trump, Keith Kellogg, arrived to meet with the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. This is the highest level of contact with a representative of the United States in recent years. And Lukashenko did not disappoint to welcome the delegate by showcasing Belarusian nanotechnologies, including, for example, this kind of flag projection on fence. Announcer. According to Belarusian state media, Lukashenko and Kellogg discussed the international situation, regional issues and relations between Minsk and Washington. And what do you think about this diplomacy? Because honestly, I'm kind of really shocked. Please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you!